Transmitting to you from Old Heart Radio.
Prepare to have your bones chilled and your hairs raised. It's the WacArnold's Brothers podcast.
Welcome home.
Oh. I didn't see you there. What's up, dude?
What's up?
This.
So, I haven't asked this question yet because, I kind of like the element of mystery. But is there actually like a good amount of people that listen to this?
But yeah, there shockingly are. I would say that, and this is just a tribute to you hot dogs. Like, there's on a regular basis, there's at least like anywhere between 1,000 and 1,500 people that listen to this podcast every month, and that's with us not putting any work into putting it out there.
That's amazing. We should start putting,
so surprising to me every time I look at it. It's an encouraging thing, and that's why I try to pass it along to everybody else. I don't do a good job of it, so I'm glad you actually brought it up, and it reminds me to take these moments on recordings to say like thank you to everybody that does listen, because it's
definitely, that's amazing.
It's a wild notion, man. It's like, I don't know. I just always assumed like maybe one or two of my friends will fucking listen to these, but there's no way I know that many people. And then when I look at like the spread, we have people that listen in Australia. We have like listeners in Russia. We have listeners internationally. Like,
that's awesome.
And so it's whether it's like people coming back for more or people checking us out for the first time. Like we're out there in people's faces. You know what I mean? And I think that's fucking. It's great. It's brilliant to me.
I think, I'm not good with like social media stuff, but that'd be cool to like, maybe start trying to advertising it a little more, getting some more ears or new viewers.
Oh, totally. But, yeah. That's it's a constant strive, man. We're gonna, be working on that actually coming up real soon here. The Instagram and the other social media that we do have for Old Heart's been stagnant for too long, and it's been one of those things. I feel bad because I know the hot dogs they need a little more from us, and we'll give it to them, I guess.
Okay. Cool.
But yeah, dude, it'll be it's, I don't know. Like I said, I appreciate actually you bringing it up because it's just a good reminder that I don't know, people like the sounds of our voices. Either way, this is a kind of like a sort of bonus WacArnold's Brothers episode, if you will.
Number 23. 23?
Yeah, buddy. Okay. 23. And being that time of year and, being a horror movie podcast and fans of horror for a very long time, we felt like it would be a good opportunity just to like dive into some general, like thoughts on like why we love horror and like what we love out of horror and whatnot. So, it's just it's always I don't know. October just brings it out in you, but if you're a real horror fan, you have it all year.
Yeah, that's like one of my favorite things that I used to say to people is like, I watch horror movies all year, like a lot of them, but Halloween's the 1 month of the year where I don't get judged for it. You know what I mean?
Dude, it's true though. It's true. Like it feels like sometimes when you're popping on the slasher movie in July, everybody, like people look at you like, what? Why?
Why not?
Why not, man? It's just as entertaining as it is in October.
There are those like group of people that will only specifically watch Halloween during, the spooky season or whatever. So
yeah, they're like the same people that follow the Seahawks when they're having a winning season.
Oh fuck!
They're the 12th man of Halloween of horror movies. So, but no, hey, I guess people can appreciate what do they appreciate when they appreciate it. I just happen to enjoy it at any given time.
Yep.
Like just like some of my like most early memories with like horror movies were things that my dad didn't connect with me a lot when I was growing up, and some of the only things we ever connected on were horror movies, science fiction, and like, you know, writing every now and then, you know, stuff like that. And so like some of the earliest things I remember like horror movie wise were like things that he showed me. He had a laser disc player back in the day, and he had this big box that was like the original Alien, and it had like that iconic like cover with like the glowing egg, and it was so ominous and creepy. Just that, like, you looked at it as a kid and you were just like, what the hell is that? Like, what is this movie? And then when he shows it to you, you fucking shit your pants because you're terrified.
Yeah.
You know? It's not literally, folks, I didn't do that, but it was terrifying.
It's ironic that you say that, because like sci-fi movies like Alien or like Predator were probably like my segue into horror, because those were sci-fi movies that had horror elements. You know what I mean?
Totally, dude. Because Alien 1979 was it. I think it's considered probably one of like the foundational like science fiction horror movie. It's a horror movie in space, and rightly so, dude. It has it gives you this like claustrophobic feeling and this like inescapable feeling like you don't get in other movies sometimes, you know, because you can't go outside. right You know, anyway, but yeah, that's interesting that you had that also, because like that was like I said, like I think like that, and like particularly things like also like Terminator and Terminator 2.
Dude, you hit it on the head. Terminator 2 is the first movie that I remember being like my favorite movie, watching it all the time.
Dude, the first time I watched Terminator 2, I was so terrified, not only of Robert Patrick as to the T-1000. But amazing. Which iconic. But also just that sequence where Sarah Connor has a dream sequence of the nuclear apocalypse, and she's like holding onto the fence, and like she just turns to a skeleton, and like
it's so great. Yeah.
It's fucking gnarly. And then like as a kid you watch that and you're just like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, like,
yeah, those were all precursors to like me getting into horror. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And then from there, like as I was able to get older, you know, I started to be able to experience like some you know movies on my own, and then my dad also started showing us more horror movies. Like, not to my mom. My mom is like the sweetest, nicest person, but she's like one of those people. She doesn't like witches, you know. She thinks they're evil, and she doesn't like spooky things. And so it was like my mom would go to work and my dad would show us all the movies she didn't want us to watch. You know? That's
great. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And so it's like, you know, you said like, and so that was, again, like I said, like that was like a lot of that kind of introduction. Like probably the first times I saw a Halloween movie, it was probably something that he put on just like in passing, you know, or whatever.
That's awesome.
But then, you know, it also kind of like that buck did stop at like certain things, you know, like I didn't get exposed to a lot of like the juicy stuff. Like I didn't get to see Texas Chainsaw Massacre for, you know, until I went out on my own and got my hands on a copy, you know, and you know, stuff like that. When did you start really getting into like horror? Like,
so, like I said, like, I got my start with like the sci-fi that had like horror elements, and then I don't know. I remember like watching a couple. Like, I have memories of like watching Child's Play and being really frightened the first time I saw that, which is funny to think about now. But my first, where I was living in Missouri, and my parents would, like every week, like my dad was in the Navy, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So in the weekend, on Friday nights, they like to go to this same bar. They'd go to the same bar every Friday night. And on Fridays, so I'd be left alone with my sister, and she sometimes would end up going and doing her own thing and leaving me home alone. And I don't remember how I got into it, but every Friday I would look forward to on TNT, they had this thing called Monster Vision. Yeah, with Joe Bob Briggs. And every Friday, I would do my best to stay up and just watch these random, like, it's, you know, some of them are like B grade or weird or low budget, but that was my first introduction to like staying up and watching 2 horror movies back to back. And that was probably my first time seeing like different types of horror movies and just loving it. So
yeah, dude, that's such a great, that's like a really good way of getting introduced to stuff, because, you know, and Joe Bob still does like,
it's fucking awesome.
Like what's it called? It's like At the Drive-In or something like that. Like with Joe Bob.
He's got a couple of them. Yeah, they're all on Shudder. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, dude. Like my little brother who's just over, Ethan. He actually sat down and we watched like a handful of like the episodes that he has up. Oh man, what was it, like Dead Cop or something like that? Dead Heat or whatever, like, you know.
Oh, Dead Heat, yeah.
You know, stuff like that. Like there's, you know, and it's really like horror is, I mean, there's been like Joe Bob is a great example. Elvira is another one.
True.
Of like, I really love those kinds of like shows where they show you the movies that you don't probably have a chance to like pick up, you know.
Good point.
And they give you like actual like information or commentary like in between commercial breaks, and that you learn some things about the movies themselves. And like that's one of the things about horror too, is that like it's not just about like always the movies and what happened, like the plot of the movie and the characters of the movie. Sometimes you watch these to see the awesome like special effects and to learn it, and to get shows like those where you learn little tidbits about maybe how they got that killed, you know, they did that scene or whatever. It was like, it's always really fucking interesting.
Because that was my first time seeing like The Fly. I was one I remember, but that was like my love of horror. Like from there, just like went into the stratosphere. You know what I mean? That was like my first. Because like every now and then I'd watch a movie with my dad, but like on HBO or whatever. But there was where I got more of a chance to see all these different movies, and then it just went from there. Yeah.
Well, and that's you know, something I really appreciate about Shudder right now. You mentioned it earlier, like is that they, you know, a lot of the others like places you can stream things right now, like their horror movie selections are fairly a wash, except for like this time of year. And what's nice is that you know, like I've been loving being able to like get on Shudder and find like new or random like old movies that like you know, it feels like going to a video store sometimes and like finding those random like picks in between like the big names, you know, here's the Fly here, and then like, you know, in between that and the next Cronenberg movie, there's like a slew of different titles that you're just like, what the fuck is that? Oh, sure, I'll check that out. Like,
yeah, they do have a great array of like blockbuster to B or C grade horror movies, or really great foreign horror movies. Like it is like you said, it's not just like your typical run of the mill, like, and I'm not knocking other things, but like you're gonna find more than just like your Poltergeist or your Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like you're gonna find all kinds of shit that you've never even heard of.
Totally. Because, you know, that was I think like one of the things that like really all like back when I was still kind of formative and getting it, like, you know, my tastes, you know, one of the things that really got me sucked into horror even more was things like going to like Vidal Video or Hollywood Video back in the day, and like spending hours sometimes perusing through the store and going through the horror section in particular. You would find some of the most like eye-popping covers
for sure,
and like cool logos and stuff, and it was just like, it was enough to just like suck you into being like, what is that? Like, you
it's so great you said that, because I wish that was still a thing, because it's so true. You would just go and just be captivated by these covers and like, I've got to fucking see this. You know what I mean?
As like a quasi collector, I can't even call myself a collector,
right?
But as like somebody who dabbles, I suppose, you know, like that's the beauty of like of finding things now is that like you still get that fucking like attachment.
Hell yeah!
Like I just picked up that, I don't know if you saw it, that Alien box set, the 20th anniversary
classic.
box set with like the VHS, like that, just like that, the silver like alien, like, you know, the xenomorph on the box, like that kind of like has a rough pop out, and it like that's enough to just like visually just fucking suck you right in. Like that's a great example because it just happened to me. But yeah, that was always something that caught my eye and like made me like drawn in. You know, like the simplicity of the Halloween cover for the original movie.
Oh God, yeah.
But how iconic that is. Like that like for some reason always fascinated me. Like
totally.
And you know, like I mentioned the Alien one earlier, that was like another good one, but it's you know.
Or another cool thing was going to the stores too, and they would have like pop-up dioramas, or like when I was a kid in Missouri, the store we would go to, the guy had, it was the first time I'd ever seen a real life like Chucky doll, and always being like, I fucking want that, you know what I mean? Because I wasn't like super accessible at the time. Now they have all these companies that have made reproductions, but like I just remember going to the store always and being like just fascinated by the fucking Chucky doll on the wall.
Yo, dude. And you know, you mentioned Chucky earlier. Like I was gonna jump on with you and be like, I remember the first time when I was younger and I saw Chucky, like I was definitely in that demographic that was like, I'm fucking scared of this doll, man.
It was like, it made you have this fear of like, am I gonna go to sleep tonight and my teddy bear is gonna fucking kill me, you know what I mean?
Straight up, it's a sinister Toy Story. but like you know, as an adult, those movies, and you know, have just become fun. But yeah, they you know, I just feel like, I think one of the things that like I've always enjoyed like about scary movies and horror movies and you know, in general is you know, besides things like the awesome visuals and like the you know, sometimes they like the compelling stories of like, why is like, you know, this unstoppable force just, you know, tearing through these people sometimes, like, because you have that with so many characters, right? Like Freddy and Jay, so many of the bigs, we'll say. But I loved the feeling of getting spooked sometimes.
Yeah,
you know,
for
like
sure.
It's a really exhilarating feeling, and like, I know that sounds weird maybe, but it's fun to be scared sometimes.
It is.
You know
what
I mean?
Yeah.
It gets your heart pumping and your blood moving, and you know, you get all wide-eyed and you're just like, what the fuck is happening next? And like, you know,
it's a good point.
Whether that's like watching like a really great horror movie, or going to a fucking haunted house or something, like those kind of elements of getting spooked, for some reason I'm just one of those people that really hits like it, you know,
I hear you.
And so that I think that's always, it's you know, it's one of the things you keep going back to horror movies for, you know. You're just like, boy, man, and like it's kind of it gets sort of increasing as you go, because you're sort of like, at times you're sort of like, okay, is this gonna get me? Nah, it didn't get me. What will get me though? You know, like what, like
horror for me was always like a comfort too, because you know, I don't want to get into it too much, but I you know, growing up, I had some really awful things happen in my home life and my personal life, and horror, no matter what was going on, horror was always there as like a comfort. Like if I was having a bad day, or you know, my mom was super sick, and horror was always there for me. Yeah. And then also like my dad would watch horror movies with me, and so in a weird way, like horror also, whenever I watch horror, I can have that like connection with them that I don't have anymore because they're not here. So for me, it's a little more personal.
I think that's a beautiful sentiment, man. Like, because like that is, it's like you can get those attachments with those kind of activities, and it's really, really awesome that to think about that dynamic of something that can be like scary and spooky and frightening, giving comfort. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I think that is an incredible thing, honestly. So but that's I mean, you know, that's one of the reasons we're doing this cast is because, like, you know, I feel like I'm a horror movie fan, but I feel like that's doing a disservice to the phrase horror movie fans, because then you put me next to you, and you, sir, are like a true horror movie fan. Like you, like your knowledge goes like far deeper than my well, you know, and it's always impressed me, because it's like, it's something that we both shared. And it's just always awesome to have, like, you know, that person by your side that you can, like, you know, fucking look to, and they're like, they have another fact for you about this thing that you love, you know? It's cool, dude. I mean, like,
I may not know it all, but yeah, I got some good, you know,
you got some
tidbits.
But you know, like, aside from, you know, some of those, like, you know, sort of like bigger names. Not that's not what I'm trying to say. What was, like, in terms of, like, some of those bigger names, what was like your first franchise or you know, big kind of like series that you started trying to follow? Do you?
So I remember, like, being younger and still living in Missouri, and kind of like how you said, like, Michael was your favorite, like Freddy, Jason, I think, like, as mainstream as Jason is now, like, I think that he was probably one of those first franchises that I really liked that helped me get into other horror. Because I remember, like, being just young and watching one of them on TV, and then it was at a time where they weren't as accessible as they were now, and it would be like during Halloween season or whatever, where they'd have a marathon, and I'd just be like, oh, I got to figure out when these movies are playing. Like, I got to watch the rest of these. Like, I just watched the second one. Like, when's the third one going to be on? And, like, looking through TV Guide or whatever, because, you know, we're talking about the 90s at the time.
Dude, yeah, you're going through the paper and grabbing the guide or whatever, and, like, sometimes even highlighting or circling, like, what time slots the things you're fucking needing to watch are on.
But that was also a time where I watched some of those out of order. So I remember as I got older, it was funny because I would rewatch the movies, and I would, like, be like, oh, so this is like the order, or this is how it's supposed to be. Like, I watched this, you know what I mean? So that was one of the first ones where, like, you know,
I'm so
glad. I wanted to hunt down and watch all of those.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly like what happened to me with most horror franchises. Like, it was so, like, accessibility growing up was so spotty between, like, between, like, what was around town and, like, what my parents would even, like, let me watch at times.
Fair.
Because like I said, my dad, he'd show me stuff at, like, you know, after my mom went to work sometimes, but sometimes he played the bad cop too, I suppose. But anyway, so it's just, it was like, you watch so many things, like almost all the horror movie or the Halloween movies, like, I didn't watch in any sort of order until you know, I could look it up online myself, you know, and, like, stuff like that.
Right.
But that was, I mean, and kind of, it didn't necessarily, like, as, like, a young viewer, it didn't necessarily fully impact my, like, want to watch, you know, the more, you know, because it was just sort of like, even though, you know, you maybe had, like, a reoccurring character, it wasn't, I guess, like, the chapters necessarily weren't as important as, like, just the thrill of, like, the individual movie, you know. So it didn't really seem to, like, be, like, a huge issue until, like, you realize that there was, like, an order to everything. And then you're like, oh shit, I've been watching it all wrong.
Because I remember that as a kid, it just not making sense. It was like, wait, why is he, like, he was just wearing a hockey mask in the last one. Why is he wearing a burlap sack over his head in this one? Because they would play him out of order, you know. So yeah, you get older. Not only do you finally watch them in the right sequential order, but you also, because you're watching those on TV, now you get to watch, like, the full version of the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and, you know, like, besides, like, some of those, like I said, like, some of those big franchises and stuff like that, there was, like, you know, like you were, like, kind of talking about the hodgepodge sort of effect of like TV, where it was like, you know, you could bounce between a handful of channels and maybe find like a horror movie, you know, between like the Sci-Fi Channel, and you mentioned TNT earlier, like a lot of them played later at like at night, you know, nothing was really getting like accessible during the day. You couldn't watch Mari and then a fucking horror movie, you know?
Right. Yeah.
But so, you know, it just like, I don't know. It just kind of like, to me, that always, I think as an adult now, that kind of like that has settled in as like this, like ubiquitous, like when I'm like looking at stuff on a streaming service, like I can go through 15, 16, you know, different movies of like completely different like types of horror, you know, and every single one of them sounds interesting to me. And I think, I think that's because, you know, I never got stuck in a pocket when I was younger. I never had like, I never was consistently watching just like Halloween, you know, or just, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street movies. It was like you were forced to take what you could get, and so, you know, you got that kind of helped you develop, I think, like the bigger breadth of taste for like the different styles of horror movies that are out there, you know, because there's all sorts, you know, whether you're talking about, you know, even like you mentioned foreign movies, like whether you're talking about like the great Italian horror movies, or like just American. There's still like so many different styles and to each aspect. I mean, Italian horror is a whole it's a whole other beast, man. Italian horror movies are fucking so goddamn enjoyable. from like the smoothness of the actors and their roles to like the way the visuals, like the visual look is, the fucking sound, like I don't know, man. It's just they have a whole.
It's like an art craft to them. Like they just, oh my god, they put so much. It almost seems like I didn't get introduced to Italian horror movie, and honestly, until like the last, you know, like 6 or 7 years. But man, yeah, it's just like it just seems like and I'm not knocking any American horror movies, but it just seems like they put like everything they have into it, and it's like a love letter to horror, because some of those movies are just masterpieces.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like each one feels like you said, like a kind of a love letter to the genre itself, and that's like a really uncanny thing for like any film genre to like really kind of like capture on a regular basis. Like Italian, these beautiful homages to its own genre, you know.
And I don't know what it was, but Italian horror movie also had these great ways of like they would do so much more out of the box, bonkers fucking shit that you weren't seeing in American horror movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly like why, you know, American horror movies eventually had to step it up. It was because I think there was a thirst there that they like in a demographic there that they were just missing, and and like eventually like directors and people making horror movies in the States like recognize that.
Because like obviously people think of, you know, Suspiria when you say
Suspiria is such a beautiful fucking movie, dude. Like
Dario Argento, but he has so many great movies, and like when you watch one of his movies, you know it's a fucking Argento movie, especially his earlier ones, because like there's just some of the stuff that happens in those movies are just, like I said, are just so like phenomena. I love that movie. It has one of the most balls to the wall, insane fucking last acts you'll ever see in a movie, dude. And I feel like only he could have pulled that off.
Yo. I mean, yeah, I kind of agree with you, man. Like, I think, I mean, like Argento is the you know, the great example. But who was it was the guy the director of Zombie.
Lucio Fulci.
Yeah, Fulci. That's it. I was like trying to remember how to pronounce his last name. There's like in like one of the most visceral fucking things that I remember. And this was like something I remember seeing. Probably too young. Was that like that? I mean, it's kind of a classic shot now, but like that moment with like the eye getting gouged
Oh yeah.
By the glass, like it's like the character, I can't remember the name of the character, but he's getting like pulled slowly closer to this glass shard that's sticking out, and it's just such a slow paced, intense sequence because you know where it's going, and then it fucking goes there, and that's something that like I think people like Italian directors really
like torture.
Yeah, they gave people like what they like what. Like they didn't like, you know, cut at the last minute and turn to a shadow right when the person was getting killed.
No,
they showed you that fucking kill.
And it was brutal.
Yeah. Because you think about like things like Texas Chainsaw, like when the first Texas Chainsaw, some of those like original like, you know, some of those like really infamous kills aren't even like on screen kills.
Right.
You know? And so that's something like, again, I think that's something that like they eventually learned from Italian directors was just like fucking show them.
They're very they're very visceral, and they will like not everyone's gonna like it, but yeah, it's a good point.
And that's the other thing.
They're not afraid to do these things, and
something you just said I really agree with, and that is that you know, horror movies are polarizing, and they are. They like the way that horror movies have been successful is just embracing that. You know, never like try to. I never want to see a horror movie where somebody's like tried to appeal to everybody. You know what I mean? I want that director. I want that writer's like story. I want them to deliver it how it's supposed to be delivered, and I want to see if I like it or not, if I'm grossed out by it or not. You know. And I think horror movies have stayed true to that in a lot of ways, where they've stayed that sort of polarizing, you're going to be into it or you're going to be grossed out by it kind of thing, you know?
So it's a good point. Really quickly, let's do like a quick little jump back to what we were talking about before. So before you got older and were able to see a lot more horror movies, what were some of your favorite horror movies when you were younger?
I would say... Like when I was younger, you know, I'd say like I remember the Thing.
Okay.
It's another kind of like, I mean, it's horror, but it's another sci-fi as well. But
another Carpenter classic.
Yeah, dude, John Carpenter. I would argue that John Carpenter is probably my favorite horror director of all time. Like I've always loved his movies because there's always bonkers shit going on in them. There's always gross creatures or something nasty happening or iconic music or like.
Okay.
Like John, I think you mentioned Argento earlier, real quick. I was gonna say. Like I put Dario Argento and John Carpenter in similar categories because they pull off these really iconic works, but they also have like they do the whole thing. Like Argento famously like worked with Goblin for like multiple films.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Some of the Tenebrae is like the best soundtrack ever in my opinion.
That's what I mean. Like it's like some of those movies, and
I know what you're saying.
Carpenter right up there. Like they just fucking nail every aspect, including this like the soundtracks and the you know, the audio. But anyway, so yeah, like a lot of Carpenter, but also, you know, like I don't know if I'd call it like a horror movie necessarily, but it's what got me into the classic monster movies. It was this movie called Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Yeah.
and you know, it has Bela Lugosi as Dracula, and it has fucking what's his name, Lon Chaney, you know, in it as the werewolf and everything. And so it became this segue into, for me, some of those older classical works, which is like things that I'd be able to watch, like even if my mom was around, you know what I mean?
Fair. Yeah.
But you know, like I think I didn't get into like a lot of the good hard stuff until like a little later on. Like I never got to see Suspiria until I was definitely a teenager. You know what I mean?
Fair.
Which is probably good, but
yeah.
But yeah, like you know, I don't know if you mentioned things like Predator earlier. Like you know, those kinds of movies, like I think those were floating around a lot more often. Those kinds of horror, like specific horrors. Like I had to seek out, like I said, more like either like late night for myself if I could, which was very rare at times, or like, you know, if I could get away with sneaking like one from the video store or something like that. Which was like a lot of times those were hodgepodge ones. The ones from videos, like if I could get away with like renting one, it would be like, you know, something that didn't look like very gnarly, but it'd be like a really like offshoot like horror movie, you know.
Okay.
But, what about you though?
Probably like some of my, like I said, I mentioned the Friday the 13th. When I was younger, I was also a fan of Cronenberg's Fly.
Yeah, The Fly's always been a staple, man. Like,
one of my favorites, and still to this day, is Richard Donner's The Omen. That movie, when I was young, that was one of those first movies that really fucking got to me and really affected me. That movie, like right early in the movie, there's a scene where where like the housemaid kills herself. Dude, that, and then to this day, one of my all-time favorite and most brutal kills in the movie is when the guy gets beheaded by the plate glass window. But when I was young, that movie just fucked with me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it was like this kid, you know, kids are seen as innocent, but no, it was just, I love that fucking movie.
Yeah, dude, that's a good call, man. Things like, you know, kind of in that line, I remember similarly, it doesn't hold up if you ask me, but Children of the Corn, when it came, when it hit, like
kid horror
had a different effect, especially if you were at a younger age. Like I didn't even think about like that until right now. It definitely, like, I mean, it's the same thing with Chucky. I think, you know, at that age that I saw it, it was like I have toys, you know, and so it's like when you see things like you know, kids particularly, like maybe around your age or a little bit younger or whatever, just kids in general, like not, you know, being murderous or being evil, like it's, I don't know,
it's shocking.
It's shocking because you're just like, I'm not like that.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, that's a good catch, man.
Poltergeist was another like childhood, like younger favorite. Was original Tobe Hooper's Poltergeist. It's classic.
Yeah, Poltergeist is like I mean, it's still just like, it's still like a good one to just kind of to watch. I think it's become a foundational movie for a lot of other works, I think. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know if I ever really got into like the sequels, the follow-ups to that, you know, the Poltergeist.
Fair.
Movie, but I definitely do enjoy the first one. Similarly, but also kind of in like an even darker direction. I remember watching The Exorcist when I was too young. Like that movie, like I love The Exorcist movie. It's haunting, and it still gives me the same chills as it did the first time I fucking watched it. But maybe not when I was like the first time, but you know what I mean. Like but like I think what got me about that was similarly like the age of the you know, the actress that was, anyway, the age of the actress, you know, and like just that time, general like association with like your childhood made you feel so fucking vulnerable. Yeah, like
it's a good point. Like, could this happen to me? You know what I mean?
Yeah, like that, and like particularly in that movie where it's that shit, like some of the things just feel so raw, and like I mean, there's you know. Like wasn't there like some shit, like didn't she actually like hurt her neck and stuff like that in certain sequences and whatnot? Like,
yeah, there's like it's one of those like haunted movies where like things happened on the set, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's like but it just gives you, and that's kind of the thing about that movie, and also just in general, like The Exorcist kind of like has this the mythos is sort of built up around it that makes that movie like extra juicy, I think, nowadays.
Same with The Omen. So yeah, I get what you're saying.
But you know, The Omen had sequels as well as The Exorcist.
True.
And I don't think Like I don't know. Did you ever like get into like those types of sequels to horror movies? You know, like those kinds of staple movies, like The Omen. Like I just don't think they ever needed to like try and flush out more. You know, I don't think they needed to either. Same with Exorcist or Poltergeist. Like it kind of takes away almost from like the potential like lasting effects and scares of those original movies. If you ask me, yeah, I don't know. It just seems like unnecessary at times. Like another, what? Like what? I was gonna say it's like Pet Sematary and Pet Sematary 2. Yeah, the first one's a classic. Another two of my favorite younger movies. Then we can talk about something else. But another two of my favorite younger horror movies. Oh my God! Now that I just said that, I'm gonna forget. So one of them is laughable. And I don't know what it was about it. I think I just like the concept, but Stephen King's Maximum Overdrive. I loved that movie when I was younger. Like the semi-truck horror. It's just a cool concept. Yeah. That's a good call. Yeah, it was just, I don't know. And then like I got older and I read the short story and like, but that's one of those movies that's like so panned by everybody. And even it was the first time like he had directed a movie and is like infamously like coked out of his mind and he like denounced it. You know what I mean? Yeah, but you know, like there's a few Stephen King works I think they tried to adapt, just because it was like some of them were really successful, but I don't think it takes away from like the works themselves. Like what am I trying to say? I feel like when they're labeled Stephen King works, it gives them like an unfair sort of weight, you know, where it's like they have this like expectation to be upheld. I see what you're saying. And so you don't get to like just take them for what they are, you know? There's this werewolf one, Silver Bullet. Oh yeah. Yeah. That I like that movie. I really enjoy. I don't think people enjoy it as much as I do sometimes, but I think it's a solid fucking fun movie, you know? Gary Busey classic, but and then the other one, and it was like my first introduction probably to like vampire horror, but Lost Boys, like just a classic. Lost Boys is it's a classic. It's a fun and that movie. was another one where, like you said, it was like a group of teens, so it was more like, you know, it hit that spot where you're like, I wish I could go out and be a vampire and just, you know. Dude, totally. Like they were so fucking cool. Yeah. Well, and even if you were skewing a little younger and you had like, you could relate to, you know, the Corys in the movie where, you know, they were like, they wanted to be the vampire hunters and you know, and it's just like, there's something in that movie for a lot of people, I'd say. True. But yeah, that's a good call. I know this one's kind of a dumb one, but, I used to have like I still don't like spiders too much, but I used to have a really big issue with spiders. And that I think I can trace back a little bit to the movie Arachnophobia. Yeah, my sister's the same way. Dude, that movie, like this is embarrassing to share, but that movie like when I first saw that, it fucked me up. Like I was like, I slept in my bathroom the night that I watched that movie because I was like, I can lock the door and put a towel by the door, and I know there's nothing in here and crawling around. And like it was like it got me paranoid about spiders. Like it's funny movie, you say that. That movie now is like laughable. You know, it is laughable, but. It's funny you said that because my sister was the same way when we were younger. Like, I always wanted to watch that movie. Yeah. That was one of those movies that I always wanted to watch when I was a kid, and my sister would flat out be like, no, we're not watching it. So I didn't get to watch it until I was older, and then I was like, why was she so like, you know? But I get it. If you have a phobia of something and you see that movie, it's going to fuck with you. Yeah. Yeah, that one got me for sure. That's awesome. Oh my God, dude. Yeah. What were some, do you have like maybe like a movie or two that the first time you saw, you were just like instantly in love with it? Like, I mean, I gotta say, like, honestly, you mentioned Suspiria earlier, and that was one of those movies that like I immediately fell in love with. And it wasn't necessarily like the first time I watched that movie, the story was really confusing to me. as like a lot of Italian horror movies are. Yeah. Thank you. I was like, it wasn't so much like the compelling nature of the story. It was like the everything about it, like the way the blood looked, the way, you know, the sound. Yo. Oh no. Yo. You there?
You have to fix this part too. Yeah, I'm here. But yeah, Italian horror movies are confusing. But what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, it was for me, like that movie. It was so much about like, the way like the visuals were. The opening where it's just even like the journey of her going to the dance school was eerie and
oh
creepy,
fuck yeah,
and the way the fucking blood was like so red in that movie. It was like something I hadn't seen in a horror movies up until then. Like that kind of like visual style, and the again the goblin sort of collaboration there was just like enough to just suck me into that kind of. I think it was one of those movies where it was like it made me realize like horror movies can have like, I think you called it earlier, like they can have like an artistic aspect to them,
totally,
like a real like art house sort of vibe, if you will, but it fucking can work. And so it's like like I'd say like something like that, or like the first time I watched not the first Alien movie, but the Aliens.
Okay.
Where it was like
Classic.
it was like a little more of like that action, but also had like lots of jump scares and stuff like that. Where I was like, that was like one where it made me start looking for other sort of like pretty good paced, like movies. It made you realize that there was like, I don't know, like different aspects to horror. That was one of those like wide awake kind of moments. There's different types of horror movies. But then you dive into like, I mean, again, like things like same thing with, God, dude, I mean, I guess I could just keep going on that. Like same thing with like the first time I saw fucking Nightmare on Elm Street, it became burned into my fucking memory. Like burned into my mind. Like whether it was you have to give it up for Robert Englund as his Freddy Krueger character. Like whether it was that menacing character itself, or the iconic, glove and sweatshirt, or just the fucking visceral, gnarly deaths you got to see in that movie, where you were like, holy shit, there's like so fucked like it was just one of those like, I don't know, you just immediately get stuck with you, Yeah. I don't know. What about you though? What like
one of my probably the earliest one is, like I said, when I was younger, like I'd seen some horror movies, but I had this. So they were a pair of brothers, and they were a couple of years older than me. And I went and stayed the night at their house one night, and they showed me From Dusk Till Dawn.
Ooh.
By the time the end of that movie rolled, I was like, let's watch it again. Like I was just in love. It's a fucking amazing, like, oh man,
dude, From Dusk Till Dawn is definitely, I'd put that in the top 5 vampire movies for sure.
That's definitely, same here.
Like that, it's just, aside from it being a fucking awesome vampire movie, it's just there's so much fucking fun violence in that movie. Yeah,
it's like a different type of vampire movie. Like it's just so balls to the wall.
Yeah, it ain't your
great characters.
Dracula,
Yeah. Well, at the time too, like it was like so vulgar and I don't know, just different than what I'd seen for the most part. It is, it's definitely one of my favorite vampire horror movies. So is Fright Night, the original Fright Night.
Ooh, dude, that's a good call. The original Fright Night's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I recently, I will say this. I didn't watch Fright Night until probably like a few years ago for the first time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And that like, it was one that like, you'd always heard about and you knew it was, around, but it was like I finally found, like, it was just like on a streaming service or whatever. And I was like, oh shit. And so, I popped it on and I just immediately, like, as an adult, I can say, like, I immediately was like, I fucking love that. Like, that ride, that's such a good vampire movie. Like when it comes to vampire movies and stuff like that, I've never really been super into vampires. Like it's, it was for so long, it was just a lot of the same. You know, it's like,
I hear you.
I want to suck your blood. I'm gonna creep in your window. I'm gonna turn into a fucking bat. You got a lot of generic vampire shit, and so like movies like that, where you know you got a little bit extra. The vampires were like way cooler design than you fucking seen before.
Of course,
you know. And with Lost Boys, there's also like a kind of different aesthetic, a little bit. You know,
it was. Yeah.
Like both of those, I could really enjoy, but I didn't really dig. You know, I still don't really like. I wouldn't put it on necessarily. Gary Oldman's Dracula, like it's like an iconic movie in a lot of ways, but it's just the one that like I don't know. It just it just never hit for me. You know.
I hear you. Yeah.
Like it.
I was never. Yeah. I mean, obviously I like vampires and zombies, but they were never like my favorite genres either.
That's what I was going to ask. Though. I was like, you know, so for me, vampires is one of them. What like is it zombies kind of another one that's sort of like low on your horror totem pole? Yeah,
like I really like Return of the Living Dead and Return of the Living Dead Part 2.
Yeah,
and you know, obviously Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead are classics. But yeah, I don't know. I just, especially nowadays with like how much they've overdone the zombies, like it's just, I don't know. I can take it or leave it.
It's really interesting, you know. The Romero zombie movies, I have like a, you know, like a special place for.
Of course,
particularly Dawn of the Dead, because that movie, like a lot of like movies for myself that like hold like a place in my heart. Like it has such awesome like visual aesthetic for the time. It just works so well, like but yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with you, like with zombies in particular though. Like it's an interesting dynamic where The Walking Dead, when it popped as a television show, it was really compelling at first and really kind of cool, and you're like, cool, zombies, these zombies are pretty awesome, and like and then it if you ask me, it kind of, it's overstayed its welcome and sort of like, it's sort of beaten that horse to death, you know.
Oh,
like,
without a doubt, especially with like the spin-off shows. I don't know.
Yeah,
and now there's like,
and then they made 1,000,001 different zombie movies in between.
That's what I'm saying. It's been same with like vampires before that, like where there was like a big boom of like, it's just been done to death.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And so it leaves me like not that interested anymore. You know,
I completely agree.
You know, where vampires have kind of been pushed, you know, too much onto people. I would say werewolves have also been up there, but I still really love werewolves. Like I love.
But there's not as many, like, I don't know. Like you could go in and type in vampire zombie movie and there'd be thousands of them. I don't think there's really as many like good, you know, there's obviously like American Werewolf in London.
Totally. There's like American Werewolf in London, you know, The Howling, which was actually really awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah, you know, and you know, things like there's one I haven't watched, but I've heard it's pretty solid. Bad Moon, I think it's called.
I haven't seen it either, actually.
But you know, there's like, I don't know why. I'm still really like, I'm really into like werewolf movies. But that is because like out of like those, you know, thinking about like sort of like the classic characters, right? If you think about it, like with the you know, Dracula,
like Universal,
Frankenstein, the Universal monsters, like those ones, like the werewolf, the Wolfman, if you will, was always like my favorite.
Okay.
And I don't know, I just like, still to this day, I just like, I like that thing of the inner beast sort of thing, you know.
Cool.
You know, but yeah, they don't make very many good ones like that. That's the thing, like, you know, there's like some of my most favorite werewolf movies are ones I can laugh at, which is unfortunate. Okay. You know what I mean? Because they just don't have very many good ones. They have like some really solid ones, but they, you know, you don't want to watch them all the time.
That's true.
So, you know, you just have those like random ones. What out of those, like the kind of classic lineup, what do you have a favorite out of those characters? You know, like there's the creature from the Black Lagoon, as well as like the Invisible Man, you know, like,
yeah, I don't know if I necessarily have a favorite. I always liked Frankenstein when I was younger.
Frankenstein's such a great character. Like the Frankenstein monster is such an interesting character.
It
actually,
is.
because it's just like it's a creature that doesn't know why it exists, you know, and like what it's like there for. And so like nothing it does is right, and everything it does makes it look like a monster.
Yeah, it's true. It's a good, that's why you sympathize with it.
Yeah.
But I always really like the creature design of the Gill Man, like you said.
Yeah, dude.
From Creature from the Black Lagoon. I remember seeing that as a kid and being like, that's creepy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, dude, no joke. Like the design on that is so fucking legendary. Like that's one, like I really want to start getting like more, like I really want to start getting horror themed tattoos. Like it's been a goal of mine to start like making this entire leg of mine like all different horror things. And I knew a long time ago that I wanted to get like a handful of the, you know, classic, you know, Universal characters, but that was like the first one on my list. Like the Wolfman, I was like, you know, maybe I'll get the classic Wolfman, but the creature from like the Gill Man, as you know, is like one of the best designs out of that entire era. You know, like
totally.
And anyway, so yeah, that's solid. What about like kind of moving into like some of those more like 90s era movies? Do you have like a favorite director or anything that came out of that, like, you know, that kind of time frame? You know, you have like I mean, I honestly, like I would immediately jump to Wes Craven just because of the volume of work that he kind of put out, like
Scream,
that became iconic, you know.
Scream's one of my favorite movies ever made. And Scream came around at like a time where like it gave the horror genre like a much needed shot in the arm, because like it was just kind of just at this point where it had all been done and it was kind of just, I don't know. And then Scream came along and just completely flipped everything on its head. Like it's such a fucking amazing movie.
Yeah. Well, and that's like one of the things I was thinking about this earlier. One of the things I love about Scream, like I'm with you, dude. I love that franchise. Like I think it's so much fucking fun. But what I love is that it's like it's a self-aware movie, right? It's like it realizes, and the characters in it realize that they wouldn't be in that predicament, and Scream itself as a movie wouldn't exist if all these other horror movies hadn't come before it. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's something that's so fucking cool about that movie, is that like it pumps some fresh fucking life into the horror genre, particularly the slasher horror movies. But it also like equally pays like great respect to,
of course, like
the backs of the horror movies that it's coming off of. And
I mean they watch fucking Halloween in it, so of course, like, you know what I mean. And
that's what I mean. It's like I think it's just such a brilliant, like I think that's one of the reasons why it becomes so like like it just you can like get, you know, really get attached to that franchise, just because it's like, you know, if you're a fan, you're just like right there too. You're just, you know, you're like, I bet I know what's going to happen next.
That movie is kind of like another one of those like love letters to the genre. I've seen that movie so many times. It's so great.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the Scream that's coming out here soon, like to see what they do with it. Like, cause it's like
Scream 5, right?
It's not necessarily, it's just titled Scream, but it's like, but yeah, it's Scream 5, but it's not necessarily like, I don't know if it's like, it's not necessarily like a reboot because it has some of those legacy characters, but it's also going to be like a new movie going forward, establishing newer characters. I'm just excited to see it.
Totally. Like, I'm not always opposed to that with these movies, you know, like I look forward to seeing if they do justice to the, you know, to the franchise. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. If it works out, fucking hell yeah. But yeah, dude, I mean, just like, I don't think anything, maybe I'm, this is a hot take on there. I really don't think anything was as iconic horror wise coming out of the 90s as Scream ended up being. Of
course. Like there's some good, like Candyman's good. I really liked like a movie that came after Scream. I know what you did last summer, like, but yeah.
Oh, dude, I'm glad you mentioned that. I was just gonna bring that up. I recently watched the back-to-back double feature. I Know What You Did Last Summer, and I Still Know What You Did Last Summer.
The sequel is nowhere near as good, but
the sequel's really bizarre. Hey, but putting that aside, the first one is like in that same sort of like kind of spooky slasher vein. It's a pretty fucking solid movie.
Part of the reason that movie's so good too is it was written by Kevin Williamson, who wrote Scream. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. Like that's like the. I mean, it has like a very. It has that vibe, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, very iconic.
The Hook Man. I mean, not the Hook Man. Sorry, but the Fisherman. Like, that's a cool killer too. Like,
yeah. It was interesting though, because it's like, you know, in rewatching him, I was like, you don't have like any affinity for that character, you know, like that was the difference in a lot of ways. Where like in Scream, you're kind of. I mean, not that he's like a good guy or anything, but you're kind of into Ghostface. You're like, the Ghostface dude is like this fucking like creep. It's this killer. It's like, it was weird. He's like, I don't know. He's like intriguing to watch. The Fisherman guy, like, you're sort of like, you know, he's just like a very like, I would say like almost in that Michael Myers sort of way, this like faceless presence where he shows up. Michael Myers becomes a bigger character, but this presence that shows up, does the job, slashes you, and then it's like out and on to the next victim, you know? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're not really like, I don't know. I don't really care what that person's doing in between. Whereas like, I'd like to see more from other characters, you know?
Okay. I know what you mean.
But yeah, like that I didn't realize. I'll say this: I didn't realize they made a third movie in that franchise.
I've never seen it. We should talk. We should. I know it went straight to fucking DVD, so we should review that at some point because, yeah, I'm sure it's fucking bad.
Yeah, I guess you know
what was another.
What?
Oh, sorry. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say another movie that pops into my mind in that general time frame is Final Destination.
Okay. The first one is so creative.
The first two, I think, were really had some really like intense, memorable stuff.
Yeah.
But that was an interesting, like, just as like an interesting plot, like.
Oh, so creative.
That movie, like, literally makes death like the killer, right? Like,
it's so creative.
Yeah. And yeah, it was like something I hadn't seen in a movie up and before that, really, where it was like the evil was death itself. You know,
true.
Like, and so that was like a really kind of like interesting, compelling thing, because I like that movie particularly gives you this inescapable sense, man. Like, I mean, how are you gonna beat death?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's like us, not even like necessarily the kills or anything in those franchises. It's literally that concept that scares the fuck out of you the entire time.
You can't outrun, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's really kind of cool.
Another one of my favorite 90s horror movies, and I think it's kind of in the same vein as like a Scream or A Noche de Last Summer, is Urban Legend.
Ooh.
I just thought it was such and to this day, I still think it's just such a very creative concept. And urban legends in themselves are just so intriguing and so interesting. I love that movie.
That's a really good call, man. It's like, I know I've seen Urban Legend. It's not burned into my mind.
Okay.
But like that's one I may just have to rent just to like.
Yeah, you should. It's great.
Because you're not, yeah. And you mentioned just urban legend in general, like that, it is kind of interesting, like just, if you think about that, like just like how, like, I don't know, just how urban legends come to like, be is sort of like a weird, I mean you have other movies based on that too. You mentioned Candyman earlier, think
like When a Stranger Calls is another one.
Yeah, like that's interesting. Yeah, good call. Yeah,
that's why I liked like the book series, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, because it was like these different variations of like urban legends that come from different parts of the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was a really like that was that. I mean, as a kid reading that, like helped bolster your horror love even more, that book series.
I completely agree.
Like not only the stories, but the fucking artwork.
Artwork as a kid was terrifying. Like,
oh my God.
I remember just like, even though I loved horror, like some of those pictures just were like, whoa. You know?
Yeah. It chilled your bones.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, did you ever see that, like that movie they made?
It was all right. Yeah.
I haven't watched it. Would you consider it like worth watching if you like the story as well?
Yeah, I'd watch it.
Hell yeah. Okay.
I think that, I don't know. For what it was good, but I think that it would have been better if it could have been rated R, and they could have been a little bit more dark or a little bit more violent. But I liked it. It was cool. It was cool. It was cool to see that come to the screen. That's
something that has very much hindered certain movies, I think, in the past.
Of course.
Where it's like, you know, if you're trying to like really get somebody, like having to like tame your movie down to a PG-13 level doesn't always do it justice. Like, I think about things like the movie, the M. Night Shyamalan movie Signs. Signs is a movie that, like, the concept freaks me the fuck out.
Yeah.
Like, your family's just living on their farm, and the next thing you know, boom, a fucking crop circle appears on your farm, and then next thing you know, aliens are fucking like showing up around town and shit like that. But the tameness that they ended up having to, like, you know, put that movie at that PG-13 level gives you like 2 or 3 jump scares in that entire movie. And it's like, it takes this concept that can be truly fucking, that can really get you, and it just makes it, it just makes it kind of like, I don't know, like after you're done with the movie, you're not like still thinking about how terrified you were, you know, you're just sort of like,
right,
that happened.
Yeah.
You know, and Shyamalan was one of those directors, dude, like one of those, like, you know, 2000s and on directors that really sort of like had promise, had some like really intriguing, like new sort of spooky work. Sixth Sense is obviously the big one.
Goddamn, yeah. The first time you see that twist ending, you're like, whoa.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. And that movie had some solid jump scares in it.
It did.
I'll say that, man. But you know, like that dude, like the last, like the movie that he just came out with, Old.
I want to see it still. I haven't seen it.
I want to watch it, but I'm not like, I don't know. Like I don't know. Like I'm mostly just intrigued as to like how they get off of the beach, you know,
or if they even do, or what the twist is.
Yeah.
That's one of those things for this movies where he's like kind of written himself into a corner where now you're just like, there better be this, like, this is the way I think that people look at it. It's like, if he doesn't deliver some great twist, then people are going to be disappointed, which kind of is detrimental. It puts himself, like you said, it puts himself into like a very specific pocket where it's like, all right, like you better deliver. Yeah. But you know, the other thing I wanted to make sure we touched on was our love for like, not just like good horror movies and bad horror movies and all this. It's just like, you know, the breadth of like entertainment that you can get from different types of horror, whether it's like a serious horror movie slasher or like a grindhouse movie where it's like really kind of like vintage and fun, and like or, you know, an Italian movie where you can really get into like the stylistic aspects of the film, or you know, or if it is like a sort of like, you know, just like an over the top kind of movie, you know, like those are the kinds like Hellraiser, dude. Hellraiser is such a fucking iconic movie and so intense and like such a wild idea. And it's like visually fucking gnarly. Like it's one of those, like, it is.
It's a big movie. That's one of those like big movies that I think they go over the top and they fucking nail it. You know what I mean? Like those are some of the things I like. Like that movie in itself holds like so many different elements of like why I love horror. You know?
Okay. Yeah.
I guess like that'd probably be like a really good like one to hold up on my end. Like if I could think of like, you know, if you could think of like a movie like that where it's like it holds like just, you know, holds like, you know, all those aspects that you can really like look to. It's hard. I mean, like I think that's, you know, because especially like things like, you know, how you and I both really enjoy laughing at like horror movies too, where it's like Santa's sleigh where it's Goldberg, fucking killing a room full of like B-list celebrities or something,
that intro is amazing.
I was telling somebody, I was like, that's the last time I saw Chris Kattan on film.
And just Fran, oh man.
So it's like, it's hard to capture. Like it's hard to capture like everything I love about horror, but there's certain, there's definitely like, I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to express, there's just so much that people can really enjoy about this genre that I think they take for granted. And I don't think that like, I'm not trying to knock it, but I think people, modern viewers get really like stuck with this idea of like a horror movie being like a Saw movie or something,
right? Which
like Saw movies are pretty cool. Like I
love the first two.
I dropped off after a while, but the
concept.
I think that got stuck in people's minds, and it got so big that it kind of like horror became that for a second, then horror became Paranormal Activity movies for a second.
It's true.
And I think it kind of put this distaste.
There's trends that,
yeah, because the trends got really like I think they tried to like franchise horror movies for a bit, and I don't think that's what horror movies are built for necessarily.
No.
Every now and then, you get a really awesome character that comes out. We got lucky with Jason and with Freddy and with Michael. But you don't always get those, and you don't always need those.
It's true.
Horror movies can be great one-offs where it's just filled with fucking nastiness and like awesome kills and like weird humor and like all this shit that you can just, it's something that like I'm grateful that like it's still alive in 2021. But I'm also like I hope that they like that people still make just like independent one-offs. I hope not everything becomes like a.
That's why some
franchise.
of my favorites, like some of my favorite horror movies of the past like 15 years or whatever. Like so, I'm gonna list off 4 movies here that are some of my favorite movies that I can think of in like recent memory. So House of the Devil.
Yep.
Cabin in the Woods.
Yep.
You're Next.
Ooh.
And Hereditary. I love those 4. Those are some of my favorite horror movies like of all time.
Dude, those are solid, man. House of the Devil was hard to believe that was like a modern movie. You know what I mean?
It looks like, oh my God, they did it. Yeah, fantastic.
It perfectly hits the notes it's going for.
Oh yeah.
Hereditary, holy shit, dude. Like,
dude, there's just something about that movie, man. Because so the thing about this movie is I've watched this movie through 3 very different periods of my life recently. So the first couple times I watched it, I was in my addiction, and it's such a dark movie. There was just something about it that drew me to it, and I just fell in love with it. When I was in treatment, I watched it another couple times. And I had like a different way of looking at it. I was getting clean. And then since I've been clean for a chunk of time, I've watched it multiple times too. I don't know. There's just something about that movie that it's hard. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but I want to say that part of me is just connected to that movie because it got me through a really hard time.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. There's like, and it sounds like that, like, you mentioned horror being somewhat of a comfort. It sounds like that movie, because you've experienced it in multiple different ways, like has become one of those, like, it's got a place, like, it'll be a movie in your heart for the rest of your life. Like then that's one of those beautiful things that, I hope at some point everybody gets to have a movie or two like that. You know what I mean? That's why like things like the movie experience is like so important to me, because
of course,
whether it's with horror or other, like it,
whatever it is,
like movies have such a special great way of taking you somewhere and making you feel
they're an escape.
yeah, they can make you escape while also making you feel fucking human. Like, you know, and sometimes they can take you on these like wild adventures, and it makes you like, I don't know, sometimes with horror, it makes you like wonder about your own fucking mortality in a way, you know, and like wonder where you're at in life, in the way where it's like, you know, I don't know, just like things push you, man. And like, that's cool. Like Hereditary.
It's like I said,
such a goddamn good movie, dude.
It's amazing. But horror has always been a comfort, and it's been there as an escape through some really traumatic and hard times in my life. And that's why I'll always, I just love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hereditary, man. Oh my God. If there's people out there that still haven't seen it, and I'm sure there's some people out there that maybe still haven't seen it because they're like, oh, there's just so much hype around it, or like, like, no, go see it. It's fucking amazing. Yeah. And it's one of those movies where after, like, you could watch it multiple times and pick up something new. You know what I mean? Totally.
Yeah. I love when you, like, that's the case, particularly where it's like, you know, there's something for you every time.
Yeah.
I like that. That's solid. Yeah. I you know, in thinking about like the future, are there any particular horror movies or anything on the like the way that you might be like looking at or looking forward to, or is there any directors that you're hoping come out with anything?
Oh, that's a good question. So I know that over the past couple podcasts, like there's been movies that have come out in the last couple months, like Malignant, Halloween Kills, that I've been looking forward to. I'm really looking forward to Last Night in Soho. Comes out on the 29th.
Yeah.
That looks fantastic. But speaking of Hereditary, I know that Ari Aster said his next movie is going to be different. It might be some kind of like weird comedy, but I'm hoping that he eventually goes back and does another horror movie because Midsommar 2 is fucking exceptional. So he's someone that I'm going to keep keeping my eye on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, like, I'd want to keep my eye on him because like it'd be interesting to see like a dark comedy from that individual. But I also just like, I really hope that they dig more into horror, you know. It's cool that James Wan is trying to get away again. It seems like, you know, with Malignant, he's tried to re-embrace like his roots as a director in horror. And I think I hope that he continues down that path, because James Wan became a huge studio name when it comes to being a director. And I think it's like a discredit to him to like make him do big budget studio movies all the time. Well, you know, I really hope that he finds him here. That's what I mean, dude. And you know, even though I think some of the horror like franchises that he helped start like kind of went a little too far, I think that like he is a visionary director
for sure
that can bring like continue to bring fresh life to the horror genre.
I completely 100% agree. You know,
so you know, that's kind of the direction. And honestly, I really would continue to like, you know, try to follow up on like Jordan Peele. Man, Jordan Peele's work has been like, I think he's gonna be a staple when you know, 2 or 3 decades from now, people are looking back, he's going to be considered like one of the modern like staples of horror.
I'm already like, so all there's been so far has been like a poster. I'm already so intrigued as to what his next movie's going to be. Like,
totally, dude. Have you, I mean, and not even just like his movies, have you caught any of the Twilight Zone series that he
Unfortunately, I have not.
So I haven't followed it on the entirety of the second season or anything, but the first season was like spot on, dude. It was such a fucking great show, and it made me realize, and like he was, you know, the narrator of, and what got me was that he, like, clearly he's a student of this fucking like craft, right? He clearly had an affinity for Twilight Zone and had an affinity for the particular style of like unsettling, like, you know, shows that they were making and like plots that they had. And he captured that and brought that to that new series. He captured some of those really classic sort of like claustrophobic vibes that you can get in things like Get Out, like those sort of like, you know, these I don't know. He's just clearly, it's like J.J. Abrams with science fiction. He's clearly like a fan of horror that has like finally got some like legs and can now like make some good like pieces. And I hope that he continues.
Okay.
We'll probably see, hopefully, some like I don't know, fresh stuff, man. Some fresh like life from him in the horror movie genre.
I think so too. He's going to be around for a while.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, hell yeah, man.
Look, this has been fun, and so this is one of those things where I knew going into this that there's so many things we could talk about, and
well, this has got to be a reoccurring thing. I think every handful of episodes we should take a break and do this because there's so much we can talk about.
We could talk for hours and still not talk about it all. So we definitely need to do a second part of this. But yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
We'll leave this one there, and we'll give the hot dogs we'll give their ear holes a little rest.
Yeah.
But yeah. Like we'll keep coming back because we'll have another movie episode coming up, and then honestly, we'll probably I'd like to bang out another one of these too. So
definitely.
We'll have some fresh stuff. So you hot dogs, keep enjoying your horror, keep getting spooked, and keep listening to the WacArnold's brothers.